Hey everyone, the first wave of raid testing on the Classic TBC Beta has just concluded, and I had the chance to test almost every boss on there. I would say that it mostly wasn't what I was expecting or what a lot of people were expecting, so we'll go over every raid that was tested during the beta, those being Karazhan, Gruul's Lair, and Mctheridin's Lair. I'll tell you about my experience doing those raids, and we can draw a conclusion at the end on whether the raids are actually hard or not in Classic TBC. Keep in mind, however, that this is obviously a subjective thing, not only because what hard means differs from one person to the other, but also because your mileage may vary with your guild or your pug group when attempting those raids, and most importantly, because the beta is in a constant changing state, and a boss that was super difficult might be made easier at launch and vice versa. In fact, that was happening under our own eyes as we were trying some of those bosses, so keep that in mind, and with that, let's get into the video. Alright, let's start from the beginning. The raid that everyone loves and cherishes, Karazhan. Was Karazhan hard? Mostly no. Let's go over why. So first off, Karazhan was the first raid tested on the beta, and unfortunately, because of how long it is, very few people made it to the end, me included. I think they should have split Karazhan testing into two parts on 2 different days for the beta, and they did try to correct that a little bit, I feel, later on by saying that Karazhan would be up for 24 hours. But still, people got locked on their template character that they spent an hour or so setting up because of how bad template characters are on the beta, which I will get to later. So even with them making Karazhan testing 24 hours, very few people bothered getting to the end. Anyways, so the bosses in Karazhan were mostly very easy until we reached Curator, which I will get to in a second, but every boss up until there was pretty much a one-shot. Atuman and Midnight were a joke. Moros was very easy, even though we had very little CC to CC the 4 mini-bosses. Maiden of Virtue did pack a tiny bit more punch compared to the previous 2, but was mainly easy still. And the random opera event that we got, which was Romulo and Julian, was also a one-shot without any issues really. But then we got to Curator, and this is when things got weird. Curator was an absolute roadblock, not only for us but for everyone on the server, and it was mainly because of a bug on his Astral Flare summoning mechanic. You see, he is supposed to summon one single Astral Flare every 10 seconds or so, but how it was on the beta was that he would summon one at first and then 3 at once consecutively from then on, which made the fight a complete 180 in difficulty compared to the rest of the raid, and we ended up getting stuck on this boss with my group until it ended up taking way too long and people started leaving. However, Blizzard did recognize this as a bug, and they did end up fixing it in the following day. I haven't tried it after the nerf personally, but I heard he became way easier after that. And unfortunately, that's all I had to experience in Karazhan. From what I heard, the rest of the raid was pretty straightforward too. Nothing too hard, but with the odd bug here and there, like on the chess event for example, where people were reporting getting stuck there because of a bug which will probably get fixed soon. So that was Karazhan. Let's now move on to the next day where we got to try Gruul's Lair with the 2 encounters this raid has to offer, High King Molgar and Gruul himself. This time around I got to play my trusty hunter, which by the way completely sucked because Blizzard decided to give us a wolf instead of a ravager, which is the go-to pet for any hunter, and as a hunter in TBC, your pet contributes around 30% of your damage, so giving hunters a wolf really gimped our damage, but more on character templates later. So the first boss, King Molgar, we did wipe a couple times on this until everyone figured out the mechanics, and then we got him down on our 3rd attempt. No sweat really. This boss was always pictured as a big roadblock for players back in the day, but honestly it didn't feel that way on the beta. With almost everyone in my raid having no experience, we got him down on our 3rd attempt. And then we got to Gruul, and Gruul was unfortunately also very anticlimactic. Again, we had to wipe a couple times to figure out the mechanics, with the fact that once Gruul does his ground slam, people need to quickly move away 20 yards from each other. Just a couple attempts on that was enough for us to get this boss down. And by the way, these groups I was doing these bosses with weren't a raid guild or anything, it was just 25 pugs grouping up and playing together for the first time. So you can imagine how much easier this would be with your guild on voice chat with players whom you played with for a long time. So anyways, then it was day 3 with the first real challenging encounter of them all, Mctheridin. Mctheridin was a really fun encounter that unfortunately with my group we did not get down. But that's mainly because there was just one person who couldn't figure out how to click cubes. But I'll get to that in a second. So Mctheridin actually started with a very large health pool, 8 million HP I believe, until Blizzard put up a system message saying that they will be tweaking the boss's health, and then a few minutes later the boss went down from 8 million to 4 million, making it a lot easier to down since now you had way less points of failure with the cube's rotation. So if you don't know how Mctheridin works, the real tough part about this fight is the beginning. Well, at least it was on the beta because of how bad everyone's template gear was. Tanks were getting clapped left and right. At least that's what I heard because they were given leather gear. So how it works at the start is that you'd have one tank per mob ideally. There's 5 mobs and each one needs to be tanked apart from each other because of the Shadow Bolt volley that they cast, which really needs to be interrupted, but because of how fast they cast it, you're bound to have a couple going through. So that's why separating the mobs as much as possible is really important. So after the mobs are dead, it's time to go to Mctheridin, which is when you get to use the cubes around the room. Clicking a cube will give you a 3-minute debuff, making you unable to click another one. So there needs to be 4 sets of 5 players rotated on each one of the 5 cubes. Mctheridin will periodically start casting a blast wave that deals damage to the whole raid, and pretty much 3 or 4 ticks is enough to wipe your entire raid. The only way to interrupt that is by having 5 players clicking on the 5 cubes simultaneously to banish Mctheridin for a few seconds and interrupting his blast wave. So that's that. You need to repeat that until he's dead with 4 different groups of 5 players, and that's the problem we ran into with the raid I was in. There was just that one warrior that would mess his clicking all the time and wipe us around 20% from the kill every time. We ended up stopping before getting him down, but Mctheridin was the first challenge I experienced, and he is overall an incredibly fun fight, I would say. So all throughout these days, there were some odd things going on the beta, and a few bugs here and there that did get addressed by Blizzard in a blue post later today. First, there's the fact that badges of justice were dropping from Karazhan. This was not made possible until patch 2.3, and on the beta, they were indeed dropping in Karazhan. Blizzard did mention in a blue post that this is unintended, and this will not be the case during phase 1 of Classic TBC. There's also the fact that even though Blizzard did mention wanting to bring bosses on their pre-nerf state, while testing on the beta, a lot of bosses were not on their pre-nerf state. For example, you had Skeletal Ushers being CCable, or Nightbane's Breath hitting way less than it did originally. And then you had other things that were indeed on their pre-nerf state, like Mctheridin's Mind Exhaustion debuff being 3 minutes instead of 30 seconds, like it was in the last patch. So we don't know really where the line is for Blizzard as far as deciding on what should be pre-nerf and what shouldn't be. And then let's talk about the template characters. Those were mostly pretty bad. I gave the example of hunters having a wolf instead of a ravager, or paladins or shamans not having a healing set, tanks having leather gear, and AoE buffs giving the level 60 buff instead of the 71. The templates were horrible, and I would say people will be way better geared on the live servers when going into Karazhan or Gruul or Mag. So this shows you how easy this will be comparatively. So overall, are the raids in Classic TBC hard in phase 1? No, not really. And that's unfortunate. There was the odd one here and there like Curator, but that one got nerfed unfortunately. And Mctheridin, who was really fun, and I hope they won't nerf him further. But overall, the rest was pretty easy. It is unfortunate because what Blizzard did mention during their presentation and during interviews was that they are looking to offer a more challenging classic raiding experience to account for how experienced with the game modern players are nowadays. And maybe they will make that a reality. That's what the beta is for after all, testing. But when testing raids, Blizzard always tends to go with a baseline and only tweak values ever so slightly to not differ too much from their baseline, it seems. And I think this will be the case in Classic TBC as well, but I could be wrong. But what do you guys think? Do you like the raids how they are currently? Do you think Classic TBC raiding should be challenging in the first place? Or do you think it's just an old school game and players aren't playing it for difficulty, but just to have fun? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. With that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to give it a like and subscribe to the Classic WoW Gaming Curios channel for more content like this. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.